Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live edition here on my channel. Today, I have a very special presentation for you guys. We're going to be covering now Caravaggio's use of egg tempera. I've had a lot of you writing in and asking me about the use of tempera for many months now, and I have alluded to the fact that I was going to do a live, but of course, I have a lot of other subjects to cover. But for this particular subject, I wanted to take my time and really explore the different formulas that have been published by writers from the past, and also the scientific journals that I always share with you guys. So before I get started, I want to share the sources that I usually share with you guys. And before I share anything, I want to invite you to subscribe to my channel if you have not subscribed. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to subscribe and share the content with your friends. I also want to thank everyone for those of you that have subscribed. We're, I guess, almost at 12,000 subscribers now. We started with the channel with a very small audience, and now we have, a really substantial audience that are always asking questions, are logging on to our other social media. So I want to thank everyone for coming by and your wonderful input and your wonderful questions. So let's just go ahead and get started. So as usual, I like to share the sources of my live presentations. I usually will create almost like a question to answer in the live presentations. And in this case, I've had a lot of you ask me, about the use of tempera. There's publications from the National Gallery in London, in particular, the National Gallery Technical Bulletin, that have been published about the use of retouchings of egg tempera by Caravaggio. And they publish some of the media analysis, and these media analyses are usually divided into either oil or tempera, but they're not very clear. And I've had a lot of you ask me, well, can you retouch oil paintings with tempera, egg tempera? So I decided to do a series of experiments to see what using the traditional materials such as stack process lead white, egg tempera, and linseed oil or walnut oil would yield, and if it was possible to retouch an oil painting using these materials. As you know, oil is one particular material, and egg tempera, of course, is water-based material. And sometimes, you would think that it would be very difficult to retouch an oil painting with a water, water media. So I wanted to explore that whole facet of questions. So I started with the usual sources that I usually do, Cenino Cenini, El Arte de la Pintura, or El Libro de Arte, excuse me. I also did some research with Pacheco's El Arte de la Pintura, as a Spanish manuscript, and they both have descriptions of egg tempera, but they do not offer any formulas. Unfortunately, they don't, have any percentages of the water to egg medium or oil to egg medium, if any. So I had to do a series of experiments, and in this video, I'm going to conclude with one of the main experiments that I did. I did 4 experiments, and I just want to tell everyone I have a semester class upcoming that will include these demonstrations as part of the semester course for students to explore. Different types of emotions yield different types of effects in the paintings. That's one of the main things that I found. It's not as easy as just mixing water and oil. Sometimes the sequence makes a difference, the proportions make a difference. So I've had a lot of you ask me, specific questions about egg tempera. So I wanted to really go in depth, and it's not as easy as just say Caravaggio used tempera or he used, this particular formula. So I started with a starting point, which is this book. And Cenino describes the use of egg yolk, and egg yolk mixed with stack processed lead white or the traditional lead white. And he just describes the use of these two materials, mixing it together with perhaps a little water, and then painting with this material, which is considered traditional tempera. And it seems that Caravaggio used this method. in some of the analysis published by the National Gallery Technical Bulletin, they describe the media analysis as oil and egg. But what I found out, one of the most important things that I found out is that that's not always the case. I mean, you could end up retouching a painting that's already dry in oils with tempera. So the media analysis are a bit confusing. I tried various sequences of perhaps oil, wet oil, and retouching with the wet tempera, and that resulted in a different effect. So I just want to share with you guys some of the findings. So I prepared a few videos, and just as a departure point, I just want to start with the published results from a painting by Caravaggio from his early days, The Boy Bitten by a Lizard, housed in the National Gallery in the National Gallery in London. So let's just go ahead and take a look at that video. This is a video that I prepared for you guys with a whole series of images from the National Gallery's website, and also a demonstration on how I prepared the egg tempera and how I, it's concluded some of my findings. So let's just go ahead and take a look at that video. So here we have The Boy Bitten by a Lizard. This is an early painting by Caravaggio, and in the National Gallery Technical Bulletin number 19, or excuse me, number 14, they published these results, that is oil and some egg tempera with walnut oil. And in particular in this area, there's retouchings by Caravaggio with using tempera. They only find uh, the tempera in this particular area, at least in the samples that they've studied. And it's really interesting. There's not a lot of impasto here. The tempera retouchings seem very fluid. And as I moved around the painting, you could see that there's just very quick light touches, perhaps with a fluid medium. You could do this with oil as well, but why was he using tempera? Perhaps these were retouchings after the fact, meaning that he, as he finished the painting, he probably used the tempera to just hide that, hiding the white. And there in the flower, perhaps he used the same medium. But one particular thing about tempera is that it's very light. It's, the white will be very white. So that's probably one of the reasons he used this. And in this painting, the Supper at Emmaus, he used the same medium. Here it's described as egg tempera and a little oil. Now this is interesting. So it's quite the opposite. So it says egg tempera and a little oil, meaning that it's mostly egg tempera mixed with a little oil. In the other one, it was oil mixed with a little tempera. So that was very confusing to me. I tried both sequences of using mostly egg and a little oil, and then I reversed it and I created a paint that it was mostly oil with a little tempera. So that makes a huge difference in how you make this medium. And my conclusion in both cases, the oil mixed with a little tempera, the paint did not, as you maul the paint, did not result in a very workable paint. So I had to sort of go back to the traditional tempera of Cennini. That seems to work the best, and specifically retouching the painting with this fluid medium after the paint has been dried. So I just want to detail the process that I used here. I'm going to go ahead and show you this video. It's a small tutorial that I did. And of course, all these tutorials will be available in my semester class coming up. There's four various tutorials on how to make different formulas. But I'm just going to share the one formula of the traditional egg tempera using stack process lead white. So let's just go ahead and take a look at that. Explore yet another method, which is documented by Cennini, which is to take white lead. This is stack process lead white. This is a pigment that I've created on my own. It has been washed, dried, in the sun bleached, and now I've just put it in water because the idea here is just to grind it in water first, then add the egg yolk, create a tempera, and then do the retouchings with that onto an wet oil layer. And that's what we're going to experiment with. We're going to see if that indeed was perhaps the way that Caravaggio worked. So what I want to do again is separate the yolk from the white. And I want to do that by just starting to break here the egg. And there you can see where quite literally just the white is coming out of the egg. And that's an important operation. In this case, we don't need to be so exact because we're just going to use a tiny bit of egg. So there we go. The idea here is just to separate and just clean. Now we're going to once again break the yolk, and you can just see that the yolk just separates readily from this membrane. It has this membrane around it. So I just want to collect the yolk for now. Okay. So let's just go ahead and just put this pigment. This is just dry pigment, or excuse me, this is just wet pigment. These are the exact materials that Caravaggio would have been using. Immediately, I could tell you that it has a unique, very interesting, unique quality. So let's just go ahead and try that with a brush. So definitely very nice. You could do the most minute touches with it. Tiny little dots. Indeed, you could see a lot of, why you would probably use this. It's non-yellowing, and it would probably sit really well on the surface. It feels very much like an oil, but except it's probably very fast drying. So as you can see, the tempera retouchings probably were an afterthought. That was my conclusion. It's essentially, him finishing a painting in oils, and as the oil cured and perhaps the lead white, yellowed a little or darkened a little, he just regained those lights by using a medium that was non-yellowing. Some various details that emerged from these experiments, and that is just one of 4 experiments. I will be sharing those experiments in this semester class. Again, I've mentioned that. These are, very long. That was just an excerpt, a short excerpt from one of the videos. Those videos are probably like half an hour each, and they're demonstrations on how to mix the various substances. In one, I do an experiment with the oil and the egg, mostly oil and then egg, and that had a result, a specific result. There is another medium that I discovered, or perhaps I did not discover. It has been published, but it's an impasto medium that where the egg and the oil sort of turn into the mayonnaise, and it creates some very thick impastos. That was a nice accident that I discovered. I did not set out to discover that, but as I worked and tried different sequences, that was one of the effects that I was able to get. That was probably more closer to something that a painter like Rembrandt would have been using. But there's some various videos too that I want to make mention. I had a few subscribers mention Pietro Annigoni, who's an artist from the 1950s, around that time, an Italian artist, well-known artist, highly accomplished, that used tempera grassa. And I had, somebody say, well, Pietro, the Caravaggio most likely was using Annigoni's, or Annigoni was using Caravaggio's recipes to retouch his paintings. And I did the research. I found a really nice little video on YouTube of Pietro Annigoni's an interview. I've shared in the description below that video, so you could check it out. And they give the recipe. He publishes the recipe, and it's about, I believe, it's 6 parts egg to 1 part oil, and he's using varnish, which was something that they did not find in Caravaggio's paintings. They don't find any resin. They only find oil, walnut oil, and egg. And another thing is that these findings are, it's not really clear whether it was a layer on top or a layer underneath. So if you're scraping off a painting and you have both tempera and oil in the same scraping, you most likely would have an indication that oil and oil and egg would be mixed together. So that's something that I was suspicious about. I tried retouching with the oil, the tempera right on the wet oil, as another video that has been published here in YouTube describes. And that resulted in perhaps not the best way to approach this, is because you get 2 different drying times, and the drying just became precarious. So um, I that was a dead end, and I decided that perhaps that was not the right way to use this medium. What worked the best was to retouch the painting, dried oil painting, directly on top with the egg tempera, with just egg and water. So just a little bit of water. And of course, you're not going to retouch very thickly because it could crack and it could peel off. So, but the paint did adhere to the surface quite nicely. And as I explored these techniques, I came to the conclusion, it's there's a whole gamma of information out there. There's different tempera recipes, and different recipes will yield different results. So I decided to go back to the traditional recipe by Cennino Cennini, which is the one that you take the stack process lead white, you grind it with water, and then you mix it with the egg yolk, just egg yolk, no egg white. And then you retouch the painting with that over a dried oil paint, and that seemed to work quite nice. It's not fancy at all. It makes sense. I mean, he describes in the beginning chapters of this book on how you should take lead white, mix it with egg yolk to retouch drawings over a toned paper. So most likely Caravaggio was, my conclusions here is most likely he was retouching his paintings just to enhance the effect of light or of transparency, to give that punch to the light. So that's something that you could do. Now, lead white, it's known to yellow quite considerably, especially if you don't wash it very well. These are things that you learn as you're working with these materials. I've made lead white for many years, and I know that if you do not wash your lead white well, it will yellow severely. So most likely he was getting some sort of lead white that was perhaps inferior, or he was getting yellowing. Another small detail that emerged as I was working on this is that if you use country eggs, meaning that the egg is very yellow, it will discolor your lead white, and the lead white will turn almost like into this yellowish lead tin color. So it's important and Cennino does mention that that detail. Those sort of details are what I really excite me about doing these reconstructions. Working with the materials is really important, so you see the, the defects of the materials themselves and how these masters were creating ways to counter those defects. So it's very interesting. But all those details and all that knowledge, you can possibly share it, in a small video. So that's one of the reasons that I decided this semester. I had a lot of you asking me about Caravaggio. I've done 3 videos on Caravaggio, or at least, well, 4 videos, and I decided to do a full semester class that focuses on reconstructing the grounds. We're going to be building a few grounds using the chalk and the quartz, which is something that I recently discovered. Caravaggio's using quartz just like Rembrandt, or I guess Rembrandt was using quartz just like Caravaggio in his later years. But there's one painting in particular from his early days, the boy with a basket of fruit, that they find a quartz ground and a gray ground. So I decided to reconstruct this painting as part of a semester course. We're going to be working with all the materials, the palette, um, building a painting from the ground up, meaning that we're going to use the linen, prepare the linen with rabbit skin glue, use the same materials, and reconstruct this painting using a transfer drawing. And I prepare a little advertisement for you guys so you could check out this semester course. And if you're interested, you could log on to the description below and check out in the description of that course. It should be a very exciting course. So let's just take a look at this video. What techniques did Caravaggio employ during his early days in Rome as a struggling artist? What materials did he use to make his masterpiece, The Boy with a Basket of Fruit? In this semester-long course, I will explore Caravaggio's techniques in depth and guide students along a recreation of his masterpiece, A Boy with a Basket of Fruit. Students will have the opportunity to work with historical materials and learn how artists from Caravaggio's time used them to create marvelous effects. Using the latest scientific information as well as painting treatises from the 17th century, we will learn in depth about Caravaggio's process and his working methods. Join me this semester as we explore Caravaggio's early techniques. So that workshop begins August 13th. And as you saw there at the very end, I have indeed a lens. I reconstructed a whole camera obscura setup. I've had a lot of you asking me about the camera obscura as well. And there's a lot of videos that document, Caravaggio's use of optics. And I reconstructed that question as well. I mean, did Caravaggio use optics? And I have a series. I have a concave mirror. I have a convex lens that I had designed, and I used these tools to see if I could get a life-size image projected on a canvas to see if perhaps Caravaggio used something like this. So I'm going to be um, treating that question during the semester course. So yeah, so a lot of you that are coming by, I have your questions. If you have any questions now, I could answer any questions pertaining to this particular subject. You could post your questions, and I'll be happy to answer some of your questions. Again, I want to thank you for your amazing support. If you have not logged on to my other social media, such as my Instagram page, I'm always posting things there as well. Luis Borrero Visual, or excuse me, Luis Borrero Art on Instagram. So let's take a look at some of these questions. Let's see. Um, so Vita, thank you for coming by. And let's see, I have Marcio, thank you for coming by. And Henrik, I really appreciate your visits. So yeah, so again, there's a lot of information that we are posting here. We're going to continue, and this was a particular subject that I wanted to explore. I had a lot of you that work with Tempera, and by no means, I'm alluding to the fact that this is a Tempera technique. There's Tempera technique is one thing, and this is essentially oil painting with tempera retouching. So that's important to clarify. for a lot of you that are, that are thinking that perhaps this is a tutorial on how to paint with tempera, it's not. This is just, we're just exploring the idea of Caravaggio using tempera to retouch his paintings. And if it was even possible using, a dried surface that has been worked up with oils with water media such as tempera. So um, anyways, so I'm going to be back in 2 weeks time with more information, and I want to say goodbye for now. Thank you for joining. Take care now.